All right, well, I think that's a pretty full house, so I think we're ready to get started. My name is Matthew Monagle. I'm the web manager here at Columbia Business School Executive Education, and you are joining us for today's webinar on working smarter, not working harder, with Professor Hitendra Wadhwa. We're going to go through just a few housekeeping tips before we get started. So on this next slide, you'll see some information about how to communicate not only with myself and the other panelists, but if you're on social media as well, some information there. Hitendra, if you wouldn't mind just advancing one slide for me, please. So here we'll have some information. Usually the first question people ask is, will there be a recording? The answer is yes. We'll have a full recording of this webinar available for you. And since you're on this mailing list for this specific webinar, we'll also send you an email that lets you know when that is available. If you have questions or comments, you can feel free to use either the Q&A or the chat box. The Q&A box, I would ask that you reserve that for questions maybe for myself and my colleague Gershom, who are running the webinar from the technical standpoint. And Hitendra is going to encourage you to use the chat box to communicate with each other and to communicate with him throughout today's presentation. And on social media, if you have any kind of comments or following along and you're sharing stuff with the office back home, we would encourage you to use both the hashtags CBSExecEd and Hitendra as, in order to tag those and make sure that we can find them. So today we're joined by Professor Hitendra Wadhwa. Professor Wadhwa is the Professor of Professional Practice at Columbia Business School. He is the founder of the Institute for Personal Leadership, and he is a faculty director here at Columbia Executive Education. He teaches not only personal leadership and success and driving strategic impact, but a host of online programs that he's going to get into a little bit more detail about right away. So Professor Wadhwa, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Matthew. It is a pleasure, my friends, to be with all of you. Welcome to this webinar, and a big thank you to the whole wonderful cast we have that puts these events together. Matthew, who's spoken with you, Gershom, who's doing wonderful things behind the scenes, and Anobik from the IPL team as well. So warm welcome. We have our work cut out for us today. We also have a record-breaking registration volume for this event today in the storied history of I think the last 3 years that Columbia Business School Executive Education and the Institute of Personal Leadership has put out these webinars as a vehicle through which to disseminate some of our ideas and teachings, and also expose you to some of the content that you can come and consume in a much more in-depth and formal way through our executive education programs. In that history of about 3 odd years, I think today we have the highest number of registrations. We have, I think, about like 3,000 plus, of you guys that registered for this event today. So warm welcome to all of you from wherever you are on this planet. Okay, I want to start with just sharing this picture with you because it was just a very joyful moment that happened, last week. I was having the privilege of teaching the Personal Leadership and Success class here at Columbia Business School to our executive MBAs as a block week. It happens in an intensive way, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And these are the happy and spirited students, and there's a professor thrown in as well somewhere if you can find me. This is at the end of the program, and it was a really beautiful, heartfelt, rewarding journey. As much for me, as the facilitator of the journey, as for any of the participants and students. And I just wanted to share that because it was this very rewarding and inspiring experience that we have been able to be blessed to have at Columbia Business School with our executives and MBAs, that we wanted to really find a way to disseminate, globally, through digital, right? And so over the last 3 years, we feel so grateful and gratified that we've been able to have such meaningful success with our executive education programs. For those of us who are not in a position perhaps to come to the business school and sample and experience these, what delights me is the recognition we are receiving from participants about how much they're being able to get that flavor from the combination of video-based learning, reflections and discussions, webinars like this that we do from time to time in those programs, and a fascinating new app that we have built called Virtual Mentor, which I'm going to share with you soon as well. All right. And so let's get started without further ado. I want to sort of highlight for you a couple of these programs from which I'm going to be drawing some insights for today's class on working smarter, not working harder. And these are from the Science of Strategy stream of programs that I've developed here at IPL and Columbia Executive Education. One of them might be quite familiar to those of you who've been participating in some of our past webinars and perhaps have even taken some classes with us, and it's on driving strategic impact. This program is about how to master the tools of strategy consulting and become a trusted strategic advisor to your colleagues, to your superiors, as well as to your clients. We share methodical tools and frameworks and steps you can take to target like really complex, challenging strategic issues and take a systematic, fact-based, data-driven approach towards getting to compelling recommendations and insights and gaining the buy-in of key stakeholders. The other program which is being launched this time, so we are actually just a few weeks away from launching it for the first time online, is on discipline innovation. And I want to just talk about that for a couple of minutes so you understand where I'm coming from in creating this program and enjoying from it for our webinars, for today. So this is a class where essentially a few years back, I started to observe in consulting with organizations that more and more organizations, when I would ask them this question, is it true or false that it is much more difficult for you today to predict future business conditions than it was like 5 or 10 years ago? And invariably the answer from any conference or event or workshop I would do, invariably the answer with 80+% of the people across every industry was yes, things are getting much more complex, more fast-paced, there's more change than ever before. I'm guessing it's the same in your industry as it is in many of the others that I've polled. And so discipline innovation was really, in a sense, a response to that, to find a way for helping organizations, drive innovation and capture the upside, of what future possibilities, hold for them, while at the same time not exposing themselves to taking a big risk and losing everything. There are some organizations that have taken big risks and taken a plunge and taken a big bet, and then they've lost everything because they've miscalculated. So how do you both avoid miscalculation, while at the same time don't just wait and watch and be paralyzed from taking action, because that can get you to, ultimately, a very rapid demise, like what happened with Blockbuster and like what's happened, for example, with Encyclopedia being replaced now today with Wikipedia, etc. Right? And by studying best practices from organizations like what you see here, both companies that have been born in a sense of this innovation era that we live in, like Amazon and Google, but also organizations like Procter & Gamble and Cisco and Tesco that have been storied enterprises of the past, but that have reinvented themselves into the innovation age. We have been able to put together a number of tools and best practices and processes, and we call that discipline innovation. It's a new approach for developing strategy, unlike the Driving Strategic Impact program, which focuses on traditional best practice, tools honed in a sense, the management consulting profession. With discipline innovation, this is about working in developing strategy in highly uncertain environments that allows you to kind of accelerate your conversions to best solutions, but at the same time, minimizing risks and costs, of doing innovation. All right. These two programs that I've just spoken about, which I'm going to be talking for the rest of this class in terms of drawing some conclusions, insights for you, are two of the several programs we have under the Science of Self, the Science of People, and the Science of Strategy in our collaboration between Columbia Executive Education and the Institute for Personal Leadership. And I'm going to now move right into our conversation about working smarter, not working harder. When I teach these classes on discipline innovation and on driving strategic impact, the fear, that it strikes in the hearts of participants, executives and MBA students, is that, hey, listen, if I've got to get value from this program, I will need to make a really great commitment of time and effort, while tackling these, strategy and innovation challenges. And meanwhile, I'm already busting my butt. It's like already like so hard for me to do all the things I'm doing. How can I find like more time to take this framework that Professor Wadhwa is giving me, or this tool, and apply it? Because like I don't have no time, right? And so most people, when I ask them this question, do you think that when you walk into this program on strategic impact or innovation, that you're going to have to put in more time, more effort? Invariably, the answer is, yeah, I'm guessing, if I want to improve better stuff, I have to put in more time. And that's why I've created this, webinar on working smart, not working hard. Because, my friends, let's learn and get inspiration from Abraham Lincoln. He once said, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And that, my friends, is what these programs are about. Discipline, innovation, driving strategic impact. They're about helping you invest preciously in sharpening the axe. Because when you have a sharp axe, there's going to be so much more effective tree chopping that you'll be able to do than otherwise. And in fact, you'll be able to go through the problem solving and the solution identification much faster than you would have been able to otherwise. You'll become much more efficient in the approach you take to problem solving, and therefore you don't actually have to work harder. Some of the most successful people I've seen in executive life and in, for example, in consulting, were people who actually were able to manage, their time really thoughtfully, really well, not really burn themselves out, not really get all consumed, just with all the work pressures on them, because they were really masterful at this game of working smart. There are 6 mindsets that I want to sort of offer up to you around how to shift into working smart, right? And what we are going to do is, for each of these mindsets, make sure we end up in these programs in the executive education world with practical tools. For today, I'm going to focus on giving you the mindsets. We will not have time to go into the tools, and that's something I want to invite you to take a much more deeper, more thoughtful journey through these executive programs, right? But for now, I'm going to offer you the mindsets, which then are enabled and operationalized through the practical toolkit we teach in these programs. Okay, so let's start with the first mindset. So this goes back many years. Let me tell you a story. I was doing with a team, of consultants, a project for the e-business, head at a major bank here in New York City. And this was about 15 years ago. And their challenge was that they were not getting enough of their customers to migrate online. They had 20 million, accounts. They wanted them to do like monthly statement checking and account balance checking, and rather than on the phone and get direct mail, which are more expensive channels, they wanted to do it online. And their marketing team was so busy, so stretched, running 1,000 programs, trying to get more and more of their customers through email, through phone-based contact, through direct mail to sign up for online, online accounts. And yet they were not achieving the goals they had set for themselves. And they were complaining to senior management that we don't have enough resources. We need more people. We've got so much, to do in terms of the goal, and we're just not being able to do it because we don't have enough people. When we went in and we analyzed, what happened, what we realized is that many of the programs they were running, if you actually did the math on them by saying, okay, how many people are you going to reach? What is the likely range of the response that you're going to get? Within that range, what is the likely range of the conversion you're going to get? Okay, well, therefore, what is the expected ultimate kind of outcome that you can get here? And if that outcome is like really, really small, is it worth spending any time here? Because you're really not going to be able to, generate any kind of meaningful growth and progression towards your goal. And so one of the key areas we added value was to actually help them eliminate a lot of fluff, eliminate a lot of work that was keeping them busy, but that you could actually have projected in advance, it was not going to get them anywhere. And so that, my friends, leads to this idea that oftentimes we are running, very busy, pursuing certain paths in our maze of confusion. But actually, what we end up with is shattered hopes, right? And we end up at a dead end. And then we wonder, like, why all this wasted energy? Now, the why part is where the mindsets come in. And, we tend to blame the external world. I have so much to do and so little time, like what this client was saying. Or, oh, bad luck. We tried this campaign, it didn't work, and we didn't get, enough kind of, of a progression towards a goal. Or, why didn't they tell me this earlier? If legal was not going to approve this, or if the compliance team was going to, require and restrict us to not do it this way, why didn't they tell us earlier? So we tend to blame external circumstances. But in fact, what I'm going to propose to you is that there are often internal factors that put us in a limiting mind frame that take us down these wrong paths. And those could be factors like this, which is, if I've committed to doing something, I have to show success. I can't sort of like be the bearer of bad news and actually tell my team, I know we invested 7 days in this, but let's pull back because I think after a month, it's going to fail. The writing is already on the wall. Or we feel like, if I ignore this for a long enough period of time, maybe the problem will go away. Maybe legal will actually start believing me and trusting me or agreeing with me or etc. Or this will work out. Right now, I'm not seeing what the end game is, but it'll work out over time. And it's these limiting mindsets that push us in directions that ultimately turn out to be failures, which we could have if we really thought about it, anticipated in advance, and saved us a lot of effort and a lot of time. And so let me ask you this. I'm going to do an instant poll now. I'm going to ask my colleague to put that poll up, which is, have you or your team, experienced shattered hopes by engaging in one or more of these mindsets from time to time? That I must show success, or this will work out, or I should not be the bearer of bad news, or if I got it long enough, it will go away, right? Now, you may have had multiple ones of these, but just pick one, that you feel like, this is kind of like a mindset I tend to get into from time to time. And whenever we have enough, Gershom is going to close the poll and show us the results. Gershom, if you can, for the subsequent ones, I would appreciate, it's a little bit of an afterthought, if you can put in a extra option, which is none of the above. So for those of us who never think in such imperfect ways, let's give you the opportunity to express that, I don't really have any of these issues. And I'm respectful of that too. So let's put that additional option there if you can. Okay,
Hitendra, we'll make sure that gets added.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so this keenness to show success, this keenness to make things work out, looks like, many of us are, challenged by that, right? The path out of this is fast failing. To actually create a culture within your team, within your organization, and certainly as a discipline for yourself, where you are comfortable early on cutting losses when you see the writing more or less on the wall. And, this is not just something which is, just a monolithic idea that you just kind of go ahead and apply from tomorrow, which is, hey, let's fail this, let's fail that, let's fail that. There are systematic tools that you can master that will help you to be more thoughtful about the way you cultivate this discipline of fast failing. So in our program on driving strategic impact, we teach you some of these 80-20 tools, some of these 2 and 2x2 prioritization tools, some of the benchmarking tools that will help you do that in a very rigorous and informed and logical way so that your stakeholders can support you in saying, yes, let's pull back from this direction. In discipline innovation, similarly, we have a number of tools. The devil's advocate technique for having difficult conversations in your team. The pre-mortem that you can proactively do on a project and a significant investment that you're making. The design of fast and low-cost ways of experimenting. The distinguishing that you want to do between smart failures and dumb failures, which are all tools that will help you get to be mastering this discipline so critical to today's age of fast failing. When we talk, for example, in discipline innovation about designing fast, low-cost experiments, we give you really a practical template and a practical set of guidelines on how to manage the metrics that you're going to measure, the variables that you're going to actually test and experiment with, the organizational alignment that you need around the experiment, the way you'll generate learnings at the end, etc. And here's a thoughtful quote from one of the most innovative companies of today's time, and their CEO, Jeff Bezos, and he says, what you really want to do company-wide is maximize the number of experiments you can do per given unit of time. The key really is to reduce the cost of experiments. What he's basically talking about is to reduce the cost of failure. And that's one of the things we teach in that discipline innovation class. Okay, let me move on to the second theme. So a friend of mine shared the story with me. He said that, I was working for a market research company. I moved on from strategy, consulting to market research consulting. And this team came up to me and said, we are presenting this 100-page market research report to our ice cream, brand client, which has a chain of ice cream stores, in Asia. And he said that, the deck was very burdensome. It was data rich, but it was insight poor. And as I went through it, I started to kind of just extract a few things from here and a few things from there. And I said, guys, at the end of the day, you've done all this work. You're sharing all these slides with me about, how the ice cream brands, stack up relative to demographics and gender and education and income and across geographies and, etc. But ultimately, isn't your story the following, which is, Mr. or Ms. Brand, the company they were talking to, you want to reposition your company as a healthful eating option. But here is what the research is showing. First of all, broadly speaking, people do not associate ice cream with health. So you really cannot, take on that kind of brand positioning because it will cause dissonance in the minds of the customers. That's what we are seeing across all kinds of social demographic groups. But we do see two opportunities for you in the healthful eating space. The first is that people do recognize more and more today that good health has to do with good stress management practices, more kind of happiness and relaxation in your life. And that's something that people do associate ice cream with. So why don't you consider the idea of creating campaigns where, whether it's families or teams of people at organizations, they're looking at ice cream as a moment to de-stress, as a moment to enjoy and to live a healthful lifestyle with regard to their emotional and stress issues. The second opportunity we see is that there are certain micronutrients, like vitamins, minerals, and ginkgo and ginseng, which people are identifying as healthy and what you can do is you can fortify some of your ice creams with those kinds of things. So he took a 100-page deck and reduced it to essentially 3 pages. And that's the pitfall I want to talk about next, which is this, this kind of mindset we get into that we have to boil the ocean. That's what the team was doing. It was kind of like boiling the ocean, in that moment, right? And the reason we do that is because we just feel like, I've been asked to read all these reports, so I better read them. There's so much to do and there's so little time. It's not my fault. I mean, I'm just been given all this crazy work. But let's turn the lens inward and let's take personal responsibility, right? So from personal responsibility standpoint, right? Here are some mindsets that I see, me having, for example, in my early days of strategy consulting. If I've got a pile of reports or if I've got a bunch of PDFs I've downloaded, I should read all of them. Let me first read and review all the data, then I will actually do my analysis, right? The more charts I have, the smarter I look. So I should go into a presentation not with just like one chart, but with like 15, because then it means that I'm really smart. I've done a lot of work. I've added a lot of value. I'm very thorough. So these are the kind of mindsets, my friends, that I feel like we tend to get embroiled in from time to time. And let me ask you this, let's put up the second poll now. Have you or your team, from time to time, boiled the ocean by engaging in any of these mindsets? As you're doing that, if I have your permission, I'm going to eat a plum.
As the host for today, Hitendra, I'm going to say go ahead and eat the plum.
Thank you. It is awesome, by the way. Yeah, so 96% of you can relate to one or more of these mindsets, and the most popular ones are, let me first review the data, then I'll do my analysis. Or I need to be thorough, so I better look at everything that comes to my desk. And the solution here I'm going to offer to you is a discipline on a regular basis of zooming out, stepping back from the trenches, from the battle that's happening, zooming out and seeing the big picture, seeing, as they say, the forest from the trees. And in driving strategic impact, we offer you a number of tools, to do that. There is something we call the issue tree, we have a very classic tool in management consulting. There is a discipline of the so what, what's the so what of the analysis you're doing, pushing yourself to step back and always asking that question. There is this discipline of always challenging yourself. Well, if I go down this path, how is this going to move the needle? Let me not engage in every analysis. Let me not pursue every idea. This is something we do in discipline innovation as well. Let me not just pursue everything, but let me ask, how is this going to move the needle, and do only those things that matter. So there are a number of tools to help operationalize this principle, my friends, of zooming out. If there's one thing I want you to carry back from this mindset, it is just this idea that you want to step back from wanting to, especially for the engineers and the scientists and the mathematicians in the audience, there is a keenness and an orientation we have towards wanting to consume all the data, and the discipline and strategy work and innovation work is to, in fact, step back from that. Okay, the third thing that I want to sort of talk to you about. So there was a study that I was engaged in for a national discount chain, which sold a lot of different kinds of merchandise, sporting products, gardening products, kitchen products, men's apparel, children's apparel, women's apparel, and we were asked to fix their children's apparel business, which was not doing that well. on a sales per store basis compared to the competition. And, we sliced and diced the data and did these interviews and looked at it every which way, right? Was the product wrong? No, it was fine. Was the brand, the mix that they had wrong? No, it was fine. Was the pricing wrong? No, that was fine. We really couldn't find, much, fault there until we did a piece of market research. We did some focus groups and we asked people, the following question: when you buy children's apparel, what matters to you when you walk into these stores? What are you looking for? And, we weren't just getting product questions like, oh, I look for the right product, the right size for my child, the right quality, the right price, the right brand. What do you think they were talking about? They were not talking about the product. What do you think they were talking about when they were asked, how do you decide, which store to go to and what are you looking for from that store? Think about that. Answer it in the chat window. Service, the store that is closest to me. Pricing. You guys are a nice restroom. Customer service, the shopping experience. Very good. Okay, so a couple of you guys, a store that is kid friendly. Wonderful. I'm recounting the ones that are making that are coming closest to the answer as we discovered. Essentially what we discovered is that who shops for children's apparel? It's parents, right, who have like small kids. Often, mothers who are walking in with like, very harried with their small kids in tow. And so they need like shopping carts that are comfortable, to walk around with the kids. They need wide aisles so that their kids can actually walk around with them and kind of, run around a little bit too without getting lost. They need like diaper changing facilities, in the restrooms. They need to be able to walk into the store, not just to buy apparel, but if they had any urgent needs for like diapers, they should be able to get like diapers there as well. And that's where our client was coming out, a cropper. And so Clyde is saying it very nicely. She's saying a Target-like environment. Target is the store, for those of you who haven't experienced it in the United States, which is very, it's laid out in a very tasteful and convenient way, right? In terms of the experience, for any shopper, in particular for parents. And so absolutely, what we saw is that there was a big gap between our client and the competition, not in terms of the products they were selling, but in terms of the shopping experience, particularly around these variables. And the lesson I want us to learn is that there's a pitfall from time to time when we're doing innovation work and strategy work, which is we lose our way. We go here, we go there, we try this and it doesn't work. And, we tend to blame, the external world again, that, you know what, I can't help it. Some problems just don't have good solutions. Or, this is the best that I can do in the present circumstances. Or, it's not that the strategy is wrong that we are putting out there. If it's not working, then maybe they're just not implementing it the right way. Whoever is doing the implementation on the ground in these stores. By the way, some of this was where our mindset was at in that project as consultants in the first about month and a half, until we finally started to get these breakthroughs and realized that we had to expand our lens, right? And so the question I have for you is, bear with me. Have you from time to time, lost your way by engaging in one or more of these mindsets? Let's put up the third instant poll. Oh, you know what? I think I have the, yeah, okay. The mindsets here are different from what I said. My apologies. And yeah, so what happens here, guys, let me explain. My apology. What happens is that you tend to think that I've got to focus on what my client is asking me to do. My client told me to focus on the products because the products are not working. So I didn't focus on the experience. Or let's be action oriented. Let's get right into doing stuff rather than stepping back and getting the strategy laid out. Right? And so what actually happens is that what we really want to do, and as you can see, most of you are relating to particularly this mindset of let's be action oriented. We are such an action oriented society. We think about heroic managerial journeys and leadership journeys as being all about action, right? And instead, what I would propose to you is, imagine if you were a voyager and an explorer from the ancient times. Would you buy a ship, get some prince or king to pay for your budget, hire the sailors, jump into the ship and just start going somewhere, right? Being action oriented? Or would you first map out step by step your journey, your end goal, and the path you're going to take to getting there? right? And if you relate to this, then what I want to offer to you is that the same is what we want to do in innovation and in strategy as well. That before we lose our way by just being action oriented, we want to cultivate certain practices and disciplines. For example, in discipline and innovation, being very thoughtful about how we define the objective of an innovation exercise. We actually bring in case studies and examples from the Second World War and from space research, etc., about how if you define the objective the wrong way, you are just doomed to fail, right? We talk about also the need upfront to identify critical assumptions you're making so that you can plan in advance how you're going to investigate and validate and protect yourself from downside outcomes regarding those assumptions. In the Driving Strategic Impact program, we teach you tools like how do you, again, define the strategic problem in a way that allows you to create the conditions for success, and then use tools like the problem statement and the pyramid principle to keep you on target. Anytime you navigate too far away, think of it as a GPS system. You need the map of how to get there, but you also need some kind of real-time checkpoints so that anytime you're veering away from the map inadvertently, it can redraw the map and it can get you back on track again. So that, my friends, is the practical set of tools around enabling you to move into this kind of world of mapping out your plan early and often. Okay, fourth story that I want to offer to you. We're living in a very political time here in the United States with the elections around the corner. Let me turn our gaze 4 years ago, when the elections were going on again in the United States for the president, right? And there was a political shock at that time one of the candidates and one of the parties encountered. And it came from the following, right? In this election between Obama and Romney, right, the polls were actually showing a neck-to-neck race. They were, for the most part, leading on one day, another candidate was leading on another day. And the projection, therefore, was that it was going to be a very, very close race to the finish. Instead, if you actually look at the results, Obama won kind of like hands down in terms of the number of delegates, and he won, with a 3% majority of the popular vote, which is actually in the U.S. it's a pretty big number. In fact, there were these swing states, and in the swing states, Obama won even with bigger margins, which was like a big shock because people thought these were states which were very closely being fought, between the two candidates. Now, why is it that happened? If you really analyze it, what happened there is that in the case of the Romney campaign, they assumed that since the polls were actually showing that they were very close, and that their people were so impassioned about wanting to get the incumbent Obama out of the White House, that they would be more motivated and they would show up and they would vote. Whereas the Obama campaign took a lot of systematic steps to anticipate that, we may fail. On the final day, people may not show up to vote, even though in the polls they're saying that they will vote. And so instead, they ended up doing a lot of on-the-ground work to make sure that people were going to be committed to showing up to vote. A lot of on-the-ground infrastructure and technology that they put in place to track people, to see who's coming to vote, who's not, go after the people who were not coming, encourage them to vote, etc. Right? And that, my friends, leads to this next pitfall, which is what the Romney campaign faced in a moment of shock, which is like, what? This happened? Oh no, if only we had recognized that our people may not show up to vote, etc. So I call it the what if only pitfall, right? And we tend again to blame external circumstances. Oh, we just got unlucky, or sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, and we executed perfectly, but this was not in our control, what happened. But really what we want to do is, by the way, as Arvind is saying, big data also played a key role. Yeah, absolutely. The Obama campaign had built an incredible database and targeted people on the basis of that, which the Romney campaign actually, the reports basically showed that their, big data strategy just kind of, fell flat. So the personal ownership approach to us, this would be to say, what? The mindsets that get me in trouble is that I feel like I need to be decisive. I need to choose one right path and just go down that path. Guys, we've done the analysis. We know the future. Let's commit to this and let's move on. In fact, there was a very powerful quote, that I read the other day from the CEO of Theranos, who's a company that is in much trouble here in the United States in the diagnostic and testing business in healthcare. And the CEO, she was basically just saying that, once you know what you want to do, what you should do, you should just do it. There should be no wavering and no kind of, second guessing and no doubting. Whereas actually in this era of uncertainty and dynamic, volatile changes in the environment, there is another approach. And that approach, my friends, is, well, I'll come back to it in a minute. That's the plan B approach. For now, what I want to do is just invite you in this poll to ask yourself, have you been from time to time, frustrated and victimized by one or more of these mindsets? Yeah. This idea of being decisive is something that so many of us, from time to time really get narrowly confined to, isn't it? And the solution is to have a plan B. Plan B doesn't mean that you're not decisive. You still move forward and do what you have to do, but you do it with a backup plan. And what we do, by the way, in discipline innovation is that we train you into a very methodical process for not just having a plan B, but having a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, a plan E, basically allowing you to anticipate all kinds of future scenarios and be in a position to rapidly adapt to those if they were to occur, because you have proactively built options, for yourself. And that requires, by the way, so one of the things I want to highlight is that many of this, training that we do, it requires not just the, application of an analytical base, certain ideas and tools and frameworks. It also, requires us to shift, as you're seeing in this, webinar itself, shift your mindsets. And so in discipline innovation, one of the key things we do is help train you into moving away from a knower mindset. That, I know what to do. I've done it like 20 years, for the last 20 years. Rather than that knower mindset, how do you get into a learner mindset? And how do you get your team and your organization not to fall in this trap also of a knower mindset, which, by the way, was a perfect way to operate in the old world, where things were kind of tried and tested and experience mattered a lot, but they don't really matter much in today's world, where the rules of the game are being rewritten, right? As we kind of trek, fresh new paths based on all the kind of change and possibilities that are, being handed down to us today, right? Similar in driving strategic impact, we have a bunch of tools to help you kind of create more of a, methodical plan B kind of approach, even while staying decisive. In communication planning, we allow you to anticipate what kind of resistance might there be from certain stakeholders. But rather than meet that at the very end, anticipate that early and then take some steps to engage with them in a way that will allow you and them to get to harmonize and get more likely buy-in at the very end. And there are other tools like ghost charting and syndication and deliverables definition, which take you down the same path. So I'm hearing a couple of interesting questions. So Kelsey is saying there was an article in the recent HBR that people who have a plan B don't strive for their goal as much because they know there is another possible outcome. Yeah, very, very thoughtful question. There was another question, a while back, I think from David Flynn, right? He's saying, can you speak to the interaction between the limiting mindset and mapping out? Seems that there is a balance that you need between mapping a plan and being, then kind of being unable to adapt to it. Well, for both these questions, here is kind of the guidance I want to give you. Look at our last webinar. I did this last webinar a few weeks ago, and that webinar was on the power of paradox. And one thing I've discovered in my journey in exploring human potential, right, that we do at the Institute of Personal Leadership at Columbia through all the programs we put out there, is that great leaders and great achievers, they were able to simultaneously put into practice two opposing ideas. So yes, you want to be very definitive and you want to be very committed, but you also want to have other options available to you. Yes, you want to have a mapping of the direction you're going to take, but you also want to be able to move away from that if you need to revise it, as new things happen. For those of us who get caught in an all or nothing way of thinking, we're going to be limited as to how much, maximization we can do of our potential and our impact. So being able to break out of the all or nothing way of thinking into an embracing of paradox becomes so critical. Okay, so the fifth story I want to tell you. I did a startup. So this is a very painful personal story for me because it's not about a client. This is about my startup, right? Me and a team of 30 people that we hired. We raised 10 million in venture capital. I was the co-founder and CEO of Paramount until close to the very end, where we brought in a professional CEO, and I stepped back, and and it was a huge and exciting ride, for a while. This was in the Web 1.0 days. Were you guys even born in the Web 1.0 days? I'm talking about 99 to 2002, and we had created a business which for a while was very exciting. We built, in a sense, the world's first technology platform to optimize online advertising, right? And the way this, this technology would work is that it would take people who would, leak out of the funnel, not click on the landing page, or not click on the application start page, or not click on the ad, and experiment rapidly in order to learn which ad, which price point, which promotion, which landing page is working really well, which ones are not working, fast fail the ones that are not working automatically through our PhD algorithms. We had like PhDs in physics and computer science and statistics and operational research working in our team. And we had all kinds of patents that we put on the technology. And so we created this massive optimization platform. But then what we found is that people were not willing at that time to pay big bucks for technology. We were hoping to do $1 million deals. We actually did get a couple of $500,000 deals with a couple of big banks. But beyond that, we were finding that we were hitting kind of like a dead end. And at some point, the business had to be wrapped up. More or less, it was acquired by another company, but for a pittance, what our aspirations were. So I wouldn't claim it was in any way a success. The big error we made, my friends, is that we did not go down the path of a couple of other optimizers like us. We had all these great scientists doing amazing algorithmic work, but the people who really made it and succeeded, there were a couple of companies that were valued at $500 million, which, by the way, wouldn't have made me that unhappy. $500 million, a great paycheck to carry back after 3 years of entrepreneurial life. I think so, right? And those were companies, for example, like advertising.com, which ultimately got acquired by AOL. And the difference that they took, from the different approach they took from us, is that they decided to take the secret sauce of this technology and use it to become a market maker, to buy unsold inventory from publishers and sell it to advertisers in the form of pay for performance. So the advertisers were getting clicks and traffic and conversions, and they were buying raw inventory from here, and they were optimizing it with their engine. And we could have pivoted in that direction too. We could have said, we've got this powerful engine, but the business model here is not just to sell this engine. The business model is actually to optimize the inventory for people, because they're not really understanding how to use this engine when we give it to them, the way that we understand how to use it. And unfortunately, we didn't do that pivot. Too little, too late. Okay. And so that's the fifth pitfall that I want to sort of offer to you, which is that from time to time, we just feel like, what, game's over. We tried, we did our best, and we didn't succeed. And then we feel like, looking back, I wish I'd known that, we could have done this, or, advertising.com, they got lucky and I didn't, or, why didn't that idea come to me? But fundamentally, what was limiting us from inside is that we just had this belief that this is who we are and this is what we do. We are a technology provider. We don't know how to buy and sell media. That's not us. Or we feel like, we've got this startup, we've got this technology. Either we will succeed or we will fail. If we're not getting enough big size deals on technology, that means we failed. And that's it. And these are very limiting mindsets, my friends. But let me ask you this. Have you or your team been frustrated from time to time by this game's over scenario? Because you've actually not been able to make yourself appreciate the chance to actually change and evolve rather than stay stuck to a particular direction. One more bite of my plum. Good for you for neither of these. I think what I find is the more passionate you are about your idea, the more difficult it is for you to see other possibilities. And so if you're not passionate about something, it's very easy to kind of change and evolve. If you're passionate about something, that's when it gets really, really hard. And the approach, of course, that you really want to take is to be able to pivot. It's a classic, practice today in Silicon Valley, this discipline of pivoting. And what we're doing in our class on discipline innovation is to actually systematize this idea of pivoting by helping you shift into an innovation mindset that makes you more adaptable and flexible. So you stay passionate about your idea, but you're also open to pivoting. Create very concrete learning agendas, if-then plans and strategies, so that you can be more able to pivot, as you generate new learnings. Separate out the core of your idea from the tactics that you can keep experimenting and changing, so that you do a lot of pivoting on the tactics, from time to time. And being very mindful of certain metrics that you're using to measure what's working and what's not working, rather than think of it in monolithic terms that either I completely fail or I completely succeed. Okay. Before I move on, let me also, I've been reminded by my team that from time to time we are getting inquiries from you. And we have now put in place, we have actually, Columbia Executive has had for a while, but IPL has also put in place a team of learning specialists, especially because we have such an extensive and rich curriculum now. And we also have this tool that I'm just going to show you, this mobile app on Virtual Mentor. And we have this new set of programs like Discipline Innovation. So we have put a set of learning specialists together. And if any of you are interested in wanting to talk to us in order to learn more about some of our programs and have your questions answered, or understand which program might be the right and relevant one for you, then what I encourage you to do in the chat window, if you look at the to option, under to, you will see that you can privately send a message to all panelists. And so what I ask you to do is to go to all panelists and share your name, your email address, and your phone number. And then we will reach out to you. And we will set up a time to talk to you, and we'll call you at that time and have a conversation about any questions that you have regarding a program. So again, go to the chat window, and under the panelists, don't share it with everybody, unless you really want to, which is fine too by us as well. But just share your name, email, and if you can, a phone number. If you do a phone number, make sure to add country code, because after all, we are a very global community, so that we know which part of the world you're in. All right, make sure to add your country code. And it's funny I say that, because in a few years, if Elon Musk and if Jeff Bezos and all these other billionaires who are starting to really plumb the depths of space, right, and start like commercial space travel kind of ventures, if they succeed, then very soon I'm going to be asking you in these webinars not just to share your country code, but to share like your planet code, right? Because who knows whether you're on planet Mars or where you are. All right. Okay, my friends. Very good. Great. So let's move on to the last part of this conversation, and then a little bit of demo I want to do of this virtual mentor platform for you. So I was coaching a CEO once of a big real estate company, and he said, Hitendra, I'm really liking what you're sharing with me about pricing. I'm really liking what you're sharing with me about strategy and about leadership. I want you to include this in that conference, that event I'm doing with my top 30 business development and sales executives in a couple of months. Can you come there? I'm going to allocate 2 days of time for you to train them. I said, sure. And then a couple of weeks later, he said, Hitendra, this particular methodology that you just taught me, I'd love for you to include it there. Can you do that? I said, sure. Yeah. I was feeling very proud and happy that he's, seeing so much value in the things that I'm teaching, that he wants me to proliferate it, across his top team as well. And then 2 weeks later, he said, Hitendra, this training that you just gave me on difficult conversations, can we add that? I said, sure, yeah, it makes sense. There will be of great value to them. Fast forward, and now we're sitting just on the verge of having me teach this 2 days, and it's a mad crunch for me, a race to the finish line. There is so much work to be done to put this program together. I walk in there, it's so crunched up because there's so many topics I have to do in so little time. The outcome, my friends, was mediocre. We have a lot of aspirations at Columbia, at our institute, that when we deliver programs that, we want a real high, not just at the end of the program in terms of sustained learnings. But I have to confess, this was not one of my high points, right? This was a program where people were drinking from the fire hose. They were just taking in so much that they were also overwhelmed. And the reason for that was scope creep. Over a period of time, the CEO had just added more and more and more to the wish list, and I just had accepted that wish list. And, and I'm blaming the CEO because I'm saying but this is what he wanted. The client keeps asking me to do more. But actually, if I have to be really honest, I have to recognize that there are limitations in my own mindsets, right? That I just feel like I have to do whatever the client is asking of me. If I say no, it will look bad, so I better say yes. Maybe I can just say yes for now, and I just find a way later to kind of ignore it, And these are, of course, limiting mindsets. Perhaps some of you experience that from time to time. We don't have actually a poll set up for this one, so we're going to skip the poll this time. But in the chat window, if you relate to any of these mindsets, can you share that in the chat window? Which of these mindsets you relate to? Where you end up saying yes, even though what you really wanted to say was no, and you might regret it later. Yeah. Oh, look at you guys wanting to please the whole world all the time. The tool, of course, we want to learn is how to say no, but how to say no in a positive way, right? So that we leave the other person with positive energy, not with negative energy. I mean, that's what we want to avoid, negative energy, right? But how can we do a no, but with positive energy? Well, there are some very practical tools. We teach in the Driving Strategic Impact program, for example, a 3-part framework for how to juggle, project management constraints and needs in a way that allows you to come to a wholesome outcome. Being very concrete about defining deliverables in order to get to the right outcome. There's a step called syndication in the problem definition, problem structuring phase, of Driving Strategic Impact. In another of our programs, which I haven't talked about so far, but is one of our winning programs, it's getting really strong support and enrollments, today. It's on winning people's support. And we talked about difficult conversations, influencing others, and building trust-based relationships. I'm really excited about this program as well. It's something we've started to offer from 2016 and are getting great response. That program, we actually teach a very formal technique, 5-step technique on how to say no. How to say no in a positive way, right? And so that's what I can recommend that you look at. What I want to do is use this as a pivot point to introduce to you Virtual Mentor as this cutting edge tool that really represents in some ways the innovation frontier in learning and development. We've had great success recently in applying this tool, not just in our executive education programs here, but also in corporate programs that we are doing for companies such as GE and Ericsson and Verizon. And I'm going to just share that with you right now as a tool. I'm going to demo it for you. And what I want you to keep in mind is that in addition to experiencing the tool for yourself, if you will take one of our classes here at Columbia and IPL, if you are drawn to bringing some of these trainings into your organization, again, talk to us. Share in the chat window, in the private chat to the panelists, your email, name, and number. We'd be happy to call you, including country code. We'd be happy to call you to discuss how we can help serve your team, your business unit, or your organization as well. All right. So here is what Virtual Mentor does. Basically, the challenge I took on is how do you actually do more than just like deliver training to people, but actually make them practice, make them get feedback, break up the training into small steps, repeatedly get more and more practice going that ultimately leads to habit, a new habit for them. That's what the new science of personal change is saying. The way to really master a discipline is to break into small steps, do a lot of practice, get feedback, adjust your approach, and over time, you will find that you mastered it. So that's what we are doing with our Virtual Mentor tool, all right? So I'm going to now shift to the Virtual Mentor platform and show you how that works, right? To do that, I'm going to have to unshare where I am right now. So just bear with me 1 second as I do that. I'm going to share my phone so you can actually see my phone. Wonderful. I'm almost there and sharing this with you. You'll see this, guys. This is a pretty amazing tool. So you should all be able to see my phone now. Matthew, can you confirm that you guys are seeing my phone?
I'm seeing your phone and Hitendra's MacBook Air, I believe. So you're good to go.
Okay, great. So here is the Virtual Mentor tool, right? It's an app. And what it does is, once we've trained you on a couple of techniques and tools for how to say no, for how to receive criticism gratefully, for how to respond to a client who's challenging the scope of your project, etc. Any of these interactions in the workplace, which are moments of truth, where you feel really challenged to exercise great professionalism, great leadership, great managerial skills. When you have to give feedback, critical feedback to somebody. When you have to coach somebody who's coming to you for help and you really don't know what to say to them. So we have programs on all of these different topics. And in this app, once you've learned some principles and some techniques, you get a chance to practice. The practice, for example, is that you get a challenge on your phone every couple of days, right? Along with the other people who are in the same cohort as you. The challenge could be, for example, in this case, Tom comes calling again. It's a small little fun scenario. You versus somebody, a client, a colleague, or a boss, for example. And in this case, what I'm saying is that you are a Hitendra senior analyst. You work in an internal strategy group run by Tom. You transferred into his group 6 months ago. You really admired his passion for the company's mission. But now you are starting to feel burnt out, all right? So there's some vignette like that I've shared with you. You're starting to feel burnt out. Then you watch a video. And this is a video of the protagonist, the boss or the client that you are being faced up to in this moment of truth. And they're going to come and say something to you.
Hey, how was your weekend? Hey, fantastic. I just want to tell you, you did an awesome job on that steel industry analysis. And I was talking with the board, and now we need to dive into China as well. Robert's out of town. And then I realized you just got back from China. You're an expert. So congratulations. It's your project. I'm really excited about this. You deserve this visibility with the board.
All right. So he's thrown yet another ball for you to juggle, right? What are you going to do in this moment? Well, we've taught you skills, right? Based on the skills we've taught you, this is a chance to practice with zero risk, because you're not doing it in front of your real boss. You're just doing it right here in our learning community. You're coming in here with a growth mindset. All of you here because you want to learn, and you're here to support each other and give each other, constructive feedback. So you watch this role play, and then we have the magic of what we can do today that was not possible like 5-10 years ago. You can record your own video selfie response. So this is me. I've recorded my video selfie response to that role play.
Hey, Tom, I respect the fact that, China's come up and some is very excited about.
Okay, so I say whatever I want to, blah, blah, blah. And then what happens is that this video that you've recorded of your own gets uploaded into the cloud. And we have some sharing with you of your video with 3 other participants in the program. And some other 3 people's videos will show up with you. And then you'll give each other feedback. And so in this case, Zach has seen my video, the same video I just showed you. He's seen that video right here. And after he saw that video, he's asked to give feedback, which is not, by the way, just like generic feedback. It's feedback based on faculty guidance. So there are certain techniques we've taught you. And in this feedback moment, you're being asked to say, did this person use one of these techniques or not? How well did they use them? Green means that they used the technique well. Red means they didn't use the technique at all. They forgot to use it. And yellow means they used it, but they could have used it better. They're on their way to mastering it, but they're not there yet because they're not saying it in the right tone or with the right clarity or what have you, all right? And so we give you a chance to get feedback like this. You also get a 1 to 10 scale feedback. On a 1 to 10 scale, how well did this person do, right? And then qualitative feedback, which can be either a video or, like you're seeing in this case, textual feedback, right? Now, because we've gamified it and you get this score as well on a 1 to 10 scale, the fun thing is, if you're in a community of 100 learners, 50 learners, what have you, 1,000 learners, what we can do is actually highlight the top responders, people who've got the highest peer-to-peer score, right? And so in this case, for example, Kathleen did really well. We can go into Kathleen and see her video.
Thank you, Tom, so much for this vote of confidence in my work and the level of excellence that I produce. I want to keep on producing in this manner, and it is in part because of your zeal and your passion for what you do. This is why I wanted to be a member of your team of creativity. I am recommending that
I fast forwarded just to show you the end.
As team lead on this project, I am willing to work with this person to provide my exposure, my experience gathered from all the other projects that we've worked on together. And because of our past history, I know this group can work as a team. We have done it before and produced great results. So I am willing, and we can sit down and look together as to who on our team will be a great team lead. What do you think? Who can we look at?
Okay, so there you go, my friends. And then over time, you know, certain people who keep shining, you know, very, very powerfully with regard to their journeys, they get to show up on the leaderboard as people who are doing really well overall, right? So the only people who see your videos are the people who give you feedback on it, right? Not necessarily everybody in the community. And after they've given you feedback, that's it. You know, your videos disappear from their phones, and it's the high performers, you know, the people at the very top whose videos stay on so that all of us can learn from them. All right, and so I'm going to go back to sharing my computer, my PowerPoint screen now. Just bear with me 1 minute. I am guessing you are seeing my PowerPoint now. Matthew, can you confirm?
Yep, just make sure you go full screen so we can see the slides in total.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we have been getting great results as we've just started, you know, the last few months to put this technology out there. And so I wanted to show you a couple of examples of those results. This is from a global telecom client of ours. And we used this tool with them for 2 learning goals. One was difficult conversations, and the other was helping train their executives on storytelling. On the left, you see statistics about how happy people were to actually take this extra bit of learning around these challenges and these videos and role plays. The client was very concerned that, you know, people may not want to be exposed like this, you know, to their peer group and etc., especially within the organization. But we found that after the initial hesitation was addressed, and a lot of credit to the client, you know, and their learning and development team in collaborating, working with us to actually really evangelize and create like an openness, you know, and, you know, from their community, you know, for this. Once we got them over that little bit of a hump, you know, people were really loving the tool and asking us for more challenges and wanting to do even more, etc. And on the right, what you see is the quantification of how their scores changed over the course of the few weeks that they actually ran this program, right? So they were getting a challenge every couple of days. And after just a few weeks, what you see is 86% of people showed a quantitative improvement in their scores. And about half of them actually showed an improvement over 20%. In fact, I think about 20% showed an improvement of 50+%, which means if the average score was 6 initially, it ended up being a 9 by the end of the program. I mean, can you imagine going from a 6 to a 9 in your mastery of things like difficult conversations and saying no and coaching others and delivering feedback, etc.? The thing that has been missing, my friends, from learning and development in the last few years, actually, you know, last several decades, has been we do a workshop and then we just let you go back into your universe, assuming that you're just going to be diligent and committed and, you know, find a way to practice. We've never had the opportunity as educators to actually keep holding your hand and taking you in a step-by-step journey over the course of several weeks to allow you to, in a risk-free way, practice and learn, practice and learn, practice and learn. We've had people now come back and tell us, you know, I had to lay a person off, and my conversation was so much smoother and more positive because of the training and practice I got through Virtual Mentor. I had to, you know, push back at a client on a certain issue, and my conversation was so much more positive in the outcome because of the tools that I learned with Virtual Mentor. And I'm just going to give you a couple of quotes to bring us to closure for today. The L&D sponsor, you know, at this client basically said, I love Virtual Mentor. It is a game changer. It is a leading edge offering, but you can't fully understand it until you try it, right? And on the left, you're seeing some of the reactions from some of the actual participants. It's a really exciting experience. There's a bit of resistance and fear before you start the recording, because, by the way, we like to do like photo selfies, but you just start doing video selfies and you'll see how much more self-awareness it gives you about your body language and your tone. And it's kind of like an awkward space, you know, stepping out of your comfort zone into that space. But what this client is saying that once you do it, you really start enjoying it, you like it, and you want to do it more and more. I was a bit apprehensive, but I've, you know, been through it now, and I think it'll just help me to continue to grow and mature. Okay, so so that's it, my friends. I just want to kind of open up for any final questions. Want to remind you, we have a few programs starting in the next few days. These are 3 programs which are really about mastering your own self. It's about, these are the you know, the online expressions of that personal leadership and success class that I showed you from that executive MBA program, that photograph, at the very beginning of the webinar. So these programs are starting soon. These two programs I've been highlighting today around driving strategic impact and discipline innovation are also starting soon. Discipline innovation is a fresh new program from us. And these programs on the science of people, around winning people's support, connecting and inspiring, driving performance and change, are starting a week later. So with that, my friends, I am happy to take any final questions or thoughts from you. I know we've run over just a little bit. Thank you for indulging us in that. From my standpoint, I'm happy and comfortable spending another 5-10 minutes just exchanging kind of like perspectives with you, taking any thoughts, stories, comments. And for those of you who have to leave us right now, big thank you for joining us and for giving us this record turnout. Today it's a great joy and privilege, for me and the team at IPL in Colombia to be in a position to connect with you in this way. I know in this particular workshop, I did more of the talking and less opportunity for having you guys chat. But I really want to communicate a critical mass of information that I hope will be of some value to you. Certainly look forward to having you in one of our executive programs, seeing you on the Columbia campus, bumping into you in some parts of the world, which I have done, by the way, in Hong Kong and Mexico City. I've just bumped into people who come up to me and say, Professor, I know you from the videos because I took your online program. And of course, for those who are alumni of Columbia Business School, it always is a pleasure to see you whenever I bump into you. It's a wonderful family that we have. And like I said, one day, hopefully I'll bump into you on some other planet as well, if the Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk's have their way. Okay. Any final thoughts, comments, questions? Matthew, back to you.
Professor Wadhwa, I just want to say thank you so much, and I know that you see the wall of thank yous that's coming in the chat box. So first of all, thanks for your time, thanks for your energy, and for sharing all of this with us today. And to our attendees today, thank you so much for keeping the conversation going, for bouncing these ideas back and forth. You guys always make these a very interactive and positive experience. I'm going to drop into the chat box right now. It might kind of go quickly, but there is the URL to our webinar channel. We've actually posted a few that we've done in the past with Professor Wadhwa, as well as some of the other ones that we've done recently, and there it went. It's already up there. So if you have
Matthew, if you don't mind, can I jump in with one thing? I just forgot to say one thing. The Discipline Innovation Program, for some reason, it's not showing up yet on the Columbia website, but you will see it on the personalleadership.com website. If you're drawn to that program, which I've highlighted today as something that we're just launching, feel free to come to the personalleadership.com website, and it's just literally that, personalleadership.com, right? And you will see the program as one of the options that you can sign up for September 12th. Sorry to jump in, Matthew. Any kind of any big major questions that anybody's asked that we should spend a couple of minutes on?
I've seen some comments in the Q&A. People are saying I think they need to get back to the work, or they needed to jump out a little bit. So I think we probably aren't going to get too much in the way of reflection. I know people finishing up their lunch hour. So this might be a good time to kind of leave it, and then just let everyone know that you will be getting follow-up from Executive Education that does include a link to this webinar once it's posted online. So keep an eye out for it. That webinar archive, it'll be posted there as well, but we usually have that email to you in about 2 to 3 business days. And then you'll hear from, there's different channels. Follow Hitendra on Twitter, go to the IPL website and check out some of the information they have there. There's a lot of information that we didn't get time to talk about today that you'll find useful. But again, I just wanted to say, Professor Wadhwa, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
I'll go back to my plum, and you go back to your beautiful lives as well. Thank you, Matthew.
Have a good day.